Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. This book is an absolute must read. Straight away, it's a 10 out of 10. It's a well-known masterpiece of 20th century literature. So I'm not going to keep you in dramatic suspense about what I thought of it. The book does everything right. Everything the book is trying to communicate, it does so successfully. The pacing, the quality of the writing, the characters, the setting, everything is done beautifully. It's a very short book. In audiobook format, it's only 2 hours. This is actually the second time I've read the book. I read it, I think, when I was a teenager, but remembered very little. I did remember, spoiler alert, that Gregor dies at the end, and I remembered bits and pieces of it, but very little. So it was nice to read it again and refresh myself. And certainly this time around, I understood a lot more in terms of the themes of the book and the symbolic meaning and so forth. Whereas when I was a teenager, I connected with it emotionally, but didn't understand it at a deeper level. One thing I would definitely note is that aspiring writers could learn a lot from this book. It's short. It takes place entirely in one house and mostly in one room, but it's captivating. Nowadays, when you've got so many writers who are doing like these 9-book sci-fi universes or even multiverses, it's really nice to just read a book that is great, but just takes place with a few characters and in a house, in a room. Brilliant. Very refreshing. So you know the story. A man wakes up to find out that he has transformed into a giant bug, and he and his family must deal with this new reality. The pacing in the book is excellent. The description of how Gregor changes over time are great to read. He starts crawling around. He wants bug food. He likes hanging upside down from the ceiling. He likes feeling comfortable under the sofa. Importantly, these are physical changes only, and his human desires and emotions remain intact. He still feels a deep, loving connection with his sister and a desire to provide for his family, even though he can't do that. He's still able to feel proud of the fact that when he was a man, he was able to provide for his family. He feels sad and alone and left out, but also wishes to avoid causing his family distress and disgust. So he hides himself. He still has the emotions and the mind of a man, but increasingly physically, he's becoming more of a bug. The transformation over time is described very well. Gregor's physical deterioration is accompanied by a mental deterioration. So a building hopelessness and an eventual loss of the will to live. Both occur at a pace that feels natural. It's not rushed and it's not dragged out. And the mental deterioration of Gregor occurs for reasons which a reader can very easily identify with. This book is told from the perspective of a man who has turned into an insect, which occurs almost entirely in a single room, and yet it has tremendous emotional impact. A reader can understand the mental struggles that Gregor encounters. A reader can feel the love between Gregor and his sister, which is genuinely very touching, and Gregor's desire to go out and work and make life comfortable for his family. It is a crazy and surreal book, but it's also very beautiful and very emotional. Kafka's use, I really love this in the story, his use of the 3 businessmen lodgers as a villain is a very clever piece of writing and storytelling. They're utterly detestable. They don't commit any action that is identifiably evil or even particularly immoral, and that's why they're such a great villain. They're essentially one single villain, even though there's 3 individuals. The reader despises them because of who they are and what they represent. They are, the entitled wanker with pretensions of middle-class sophistication, and someone who expects deference not because they've done anything that would deserve deference, but simply because they believe themselves to have earned it through the hard work of their respectful existence. When they are given the opportunity to prove themselves cultured, when Greta gives them a violin recital, they take off to a corner of the room to whisper rudely to one another and smoke their stinking cigars, to communicate in a kind of passive aggressive manner that the recital was unsatisfactory because, you know, who knows, she probably, because she didn't play some shitty popular tune that they wanted to hear. This, of course, makes it all the more beautiful when the father tells them to fuck off at the end of the novel. The ending, when the family comes together and reflects upon their life, is very beautiful. Reading it, I felt sorry that such a nice family had to suffer through such a terrible time. One of the brilliant aspects of Metamorphosis is the actual metamorphosis does not happen at the start. It begins at the start of the book when Gregor wakes up as a bug, but it only ends when Gregor dies. At the start, he is a man trapped in a bug's body, and he gradually becomes a bug with the mind of a man, which is not the same thing. When following his death, he is shoved with a broom, like any dead bug would be. He has completed his metamorphosis. At the point of death, the last trace of humanity is gone from him, and he is just a big dead bug that needs to be disposed of. One of the aspects of the book which I felt very strongly when reading it is the pain of losing one's family. At times, Gregor feels like a ghost, watching on as his family, oblivious to his presence, mourn him and mourn his loss and the loss of what he provided and the loss of his company. The book is timeless because it is an exploration of the psychology of the broken man, a virtuous, hardworking man who is destroyed and left for a while to ponder the wreckage of his life before his last breaths flee from his desiccated form. This is a very relevant book today because in the increasingly atomized, woke, anti-family, pro-degeneracy, global homo simp-ridden world that Ronnie V, the 19th, stormed into, and all the political tyranny which followed in the wake of that, many good men are being destroyed and have been destroyed. And they're kept on societal life support by the TikTok wank bank, or the river of putrid sludge calling itself entertainment that belches out of an American culture that isn't even a pathetic shadow of its former self. Sports ball and the vague promise that if you just hang on for a little while longer, it all might eventually get better. In this environment, many men are being broken. I enjoyed that wee rant. And when I read Metamorphosis, even though it was written a very long time ago, I can identify that man, the man that we see all around us today. I would like to indulge myself in something of a thought experiment. There's a very interesting parallel between what happens in this book and what is happening now as a result of transgenderism in the West, and particularly in the USA. Abigail Shrier wrote an excellent book called Irreversible Damage, in which she talks about teenage girls who have essentially become victims of the mass psychosis that is trans. They inflict massive damage on their bodies to achieve transformations into something resembling a male. And they undergo this voluntarily. The mental and physical transformations that these girls undergo and the massive damage that it causes to the girls' families is reminiscent of the metamorphosis of Gregor Samsa and the damage it causes to his family. I thought that was very interesting. Obviously not intentional or prophetic or anything, but if a family member was suffering through that, I think they would really, really understand Metamorphosis on a deep level. It would probably really hit home with them. I think that anyone who has been around long enough to see their friends and dreams melt away as they go on through life while their family remains at their side will understand a lot of what is in Metamorphosis. I am declaring Metamorphosis a masterpiece. Read it.